And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Magda. How you doing?
I am very well, very excited about this
Yeah,
conversation.
Magda Magdalena, right?
Yes, so not many people know this, but this is,
Oh,
yes, my
oops.
first
Oh,
name. No, but my first name is Magda and middle name is Magdalena, yes.
and your third name is Magdalena? Magda
No,
Magdalena Magdalena?
just Magda Magdalena.
Okay, okay. Is your
Plus,
last
I'm saying this in a Polish accent, Magda Magdalena.
So do you publicize your real last name or you just use K?
So Kay is it's like a nickname because I'm Polish, and Polish last names are famous for being just impossible to pronounce by anyone who's not from Eastern Europe.
Can I try your pronunciation?
Go.
I can try. Okay, just let me read it first. It's on the screen. People can't see, but I can see it. So, Quatoska?
Okay, so sort of. So W, it's a V. Try it again. Imagine this is a V.
Kwatoska?
Pretty much, yeah.
Say it. Say it.
Kwiatkowska.
Kwiat. Okay. Kwiatkoska.
And then
Wow.
kwiat,
Yeah.
it's a flower. It means a
Oh.
flower.
Oh, the
But,
flower
but
of.
yes, I use Magda K for work because I figured no one is going to be able to read that. So it's Magda K for work.
Kwiatkoska. Kwiatkoska. Nice.
Amazing. It's like, gosh, every people would think you're from Poland.
So yeah, I mean, I'm very excited to talk to you and about Mary Magdalene and stuff like that. But first, I want you to go back all the way back to childhood, talk us through the home life. I'm guessing maybe you were raised Catholic ostensibly. I don't know. I don't know anything about you, but just talk us through the faith journey, starting really young. Like when did you realize
Mm.
something? There's a spiritual dimension to life. Maybe you believed in God, or maybe you do now. I don't know. Walk me through the whole journey.
Sure. So, I mean, Poland is a Catholic country. So, if you think of religion here, it's part of the culture. Like all of our traditions are, connected to the church. So, I was raised Catholic and I went to church. But I was always very logical, and it's funny because at some point, like my logical brain took over, and so later, and I'm going to kind of jump a little bit here, but later when I got into personal development and spirituality, I actually remember when I was first exposed to someone talking about energy or meditation, and all I'm thinking is, this is bullshit. I was extremely closed. But because I was working for a company that was producing a lot of different online courses, I had to go through all of this, and so I started thinking that a lot of the things around spirituality is very similar to psychology. They just use different terms. And then when I was started like looking back at my childhood and church, I was like, oh, actually, a lot of things that we talk about in spirituality or yoga, they're present in Catholic Church as well. So I think for me, I feel like there's certain levels, and kind of where I am now is that I honestly feel it's all the same. For me, all the religions and spirituality, it's all the same. It's a certain path or container that may be more available for some people. And these containers are co-created with humans. That's why we have so many. But I honestly think that it doesn't matter which path you choose, you are going to get to God. And I will be honest with you. I definitely used to be pretty triggered by the word God in the past, and I wanted to like remove any charge and any meaning, like decharge the word, so this word, so that I can fill this word with my meaning and my emotions. So very often when I speak to people and I would use the word God, people are like, a bit like kind of, okay, what are you talking about? And like for me, God, universe, love, consciousness, it's just all the same. So that's kind of where I am with all of this today. I think, to be fair, I don't think I am really strongly connected to anything. There's a lot of peace in my approach to life, as in my dad always said, live and let live. So it's like, do what works for you. As long as you're not harming other people, just do you. And if we're really, really different, we may just not share lives in any way. And if we feel we can accept each other, then, we can be friends, partners, family, etc. But a lot of my philosophy today is just like, I believe people do need a spiritual presence in their life. When I meet people who don't believe in anything, I'm like, okay, you're probably not for me. So I do believe there's more than the physical aspect that we see. But how people want to explain it, honestly, for me, this is your personal experience.
So thank you. We're going to dig into your worldview very much so, but right now I want to sort of fill in the gaps with the biographical stuff. So how many siblings do you have? What kind of journey are they? Are they all practicing Catholic, or are they New Age? Like what are, maybe some of them turned Muslim or a Scientologist? I don't know. But just talk about that to the extent that you're comfortable, of course,
Yeah.
without betraying any confidences. And then, also talk about your love life. Did you meet a husband, the father of your children, or not yet? Or are you interested in that? Like, talk about that, and then
Sure.
we'll go into other stuff.
So I have one brother. So, okay, my mom comes from the countryside. And again, Poland being traditionally a very Catholic country, countryside meant you have to go to church. Like if you didn't show up to church on Sunday, the whole village would talk. So actually, it just happened that when I was born with my brother, when we were small, our grandma actually ended up moving in with us. So she left the countryside and she moved in with us in the city. And so we went to church when we were kids, and like I had my communion, and then there's another ritual which it's present in a Catholic church, and I don't remember the English name for this. This is the
Confession.
one
So
that I
was it confession, or was it
no, so in
confirmation?
Poland,
Confirmation,
yes,
or
this is the one. Yes, that's the one I didn't do. So this is basically around when I was in high school, when I think I stopped going to church. From my parents were always like, we don't want this. I think I don't know if I ever went to church with them. I think I was going with my grandma when I was a kid. Um, and then my parents, my father's parents, I don't think they were really ever into religion, although my grandma was into like new age things, but she didn't want to share. Like she had
oh,
tarot cards
oh yeah.
and a few other big books about astral projection, but she didn't want to share about this.
Oh.
So I was just sometimes like grabbing some of those books and checking things out. But it was only after she died that I became aware of how much she was actually keeping and she was aware of. But for some reason, she just didn't want to share. Didn't want to have these conversations with other people. So practically speaking, my family, like we're all Catholic, but we don't practice. So I think, like in America, I think because you guys have different churches, like you actually have people who don't belong to any church. So
Yeah.
that's not really the case in Poland. You just kind
Uh,
of automatic. It's very rare for someone not to be baptized. So you'd still go through everything. You would still be a part of of all the traditions, even if you practically um, don't, like if you don't practice religion, but you would still belong to church. So that's my family.
yeah.
And to answer the other question, I am not married. No, I have not met my husband. I definitely want to.
Uh,
I want to have a family. But so far, I haven't met someone with whom I would want
oh, okay.
to do that.
Have you had a lot
Yeah.
of without being too crass? Have you had a lot of boyfriends? Or?
No, not that many. You know what? It's actually kind of funny. I am really really good on my own, which I think is quite
Ah.
funny considering
Ah.
the work that I do.
Uh,
But it's also how my life happened, and I've been nomadic for half of my life,
uh,
and I'm 38 now. So I
ah.
actually I I started being on my own when I was 17. It just kind of that's how life happened, and I ended up just really moving around the world a lot. So
Ah.
that's been my reality, and I got really used to it, and I am really happy on my own. I don't have the sense of lack. Now, of course, there's certain things that you experience in a romantic relationship that are not available to you when you're single, and that these are the aspects that I would love to have. But I would lie if I said that I really wanted, because if I really wanted it, I would have it. I would prioritize it, right? Like I do believe that. And I think there are just some aspects of my single life that I really, really love, that make me very happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's okay. You look very good, by the way. I thought you were in your 20s, so
Thank
looking
you.
very, very good. I'm sure you have a lot of men chasing after you, but you know how to say no or to navigate that
Well, okay, I'm
minefield.
gonna pause you here. I'm gonna pause you. I will be honest with you. I think my early 30s, yes, I was getting a lot of attention,
Ah.
but I have seen it change.
Oh yeah.
Like I think, yeah, in my late 30s, I have seen. But you know what? To be fair, okay, I also say this. So I spent about 7 years in like tantric conscious communities, which are very sexual, sensual, and very open. And especially back then, like just if your energy, especially your sexual energy, is just like radiating out of your body, people feel it and they react. But about 4 years ago, I really pulled that energy in, and I'm not really showing it as much. And a lot of it was also a very painful breakup that I went through at the beginning of pandemic. And I
Oh.
think a part of me, like, I'm still not fully ready to open. Like basically where I am now, it's I'd rather be single than in a wrong relationship, because I can be radiant and so alive when I'm single, but if I'm dating the wrong person, then they steal my energy. Like I cannot be alive with someone who's not healthy for me. So it's something I definitely felt, and I think I just pulled my energy back in, because I honestly, like, there are moments when I just feel invisible.
Oh
And
yeah.
I won't
Oh.
lie, for a
Oh.
woman, this transition, it's a bit difficult, because we live in a society that mostly cherishes the looks and the youth about women. So when you're getting older, I feel it. I feel it. And it's a bit sad, because it's like, well, I'm not going to suddenly become younger, right? It's just going to get kind of worse from here. So yeah, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have a problem if you want to find a man. I don't think you're gonna have any problem whatsoever. But it's about what you want, you know. I'm just wondering about, you know, I'm very interested in what people think. I know what I think, but I want to know what other people think about the differences between men and women. I firmly believe, as the church teaches, there are men and women, and you know, some people can be born with defects and deformities and stuff like that. That's unfortunate, but it's a very small percentage. But you know, generally speaking, if you're a healthy man, you're a man. If you're a healthy woman, you're a woman. And if you're an unhealthy man, you're an unhealthy man. You know, if you're an unhealthy woman, you're an unhealthy woman. So like, there's no such
Mm.
thing as switching your sex. Like that just doesn't. That's not a reality. So you may disagree, but
Well, you may be surprised. You may
uh,
be surprised. I believe there are two genders, men and
uh,
women.
okay.
Now, I will tell you this. I met two individuals in a female body who don't feel that
Uh,
they're a woman.
uh,
And I know them personally, and
oh,
I understand their journey, and I respect it. I'm like, you're a human being. I'm not going to disrespect you in any way just because you feel like you don't really fit it. But I think there's a difference between that and suddenly speaking that we have more than two genders, or the genders don't matter. And on top of this, I'll tell you that I find that this is getting so confusing. I don't even want to take part in this conversation. This is literally the very first time I said anything publicly, because for
oh,
me, like, I get annoyed that like people would say, "Oh, you're not tolerant because you just use the wrong pronouns." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, something I personally don't agree with is when a minority expects everyone else to just change everything they've been doing their whole life to fit the minority. Like, I am a minority in many situations, but for example, I come from Poland. I'm Polish, but I don't really feel that I'm Polish. I left this country like 20 years ago, and I feel just as Malaysian or Balinese as I feel Polish. Like any country I've lived in, I have a very strong connection. I don't feel any strong connection to Poland. So I feel like a citizen of the world. But I'm not telling you now, let's just abandon the concept of nationality, right? There's a difference. I'm not expecting anyone to fit me. Like when I live abroad and I'm not a local person, there are certain benefits that come with that, and also certain downsides. And I'm like, yep, what it is what it is. Like, we're not always gonna get what we want. But for me, the conversation is really crazy. And if you look at all the work that I do, I always speak men and women. And I speak to heterosexual couples. And the reason why, it's because that's my expertise, that's my experience, and that's where I feel most comfortable. I'm not against anyone. But for me, these days, we want to be so politically correct, and it's freaking impossible. It's like you're safer not to say anything, but if you try to be inclusive, they're going to pick on tiny little mistake that you made, and they're going to just kill you for that. So I'm like, okay, guys, so I am out of this conversation. So these are my views. And this is the only time I actually ever shared anything
oh.
about this publicly.
Yeah, yeah, we won't dwell on this, but I thank you for sharing that. And I'm a little bit playful and silly, and you know, when I see the world going crazy in many different ways, it's not just this, but many different ways, um, with politics and different, identity politics and stuff like that. Um, my approach is to just to have fun with it. So, rather than taking it very seriously, I like to turn it into a little game, twist it around on itself or whatever, and sort of force those who would want me to cater to their mental illness, force them to cater to my mental illness. Like, I have a mental illness where I think there are only two sexes, okay? And when I use pronouns based on your biological sex. I don't use pronouns based on the human construct of gender, so called. So hey, cater to my mental illness. My mental illness is, when I
Mm.
see a biological woman, I'm going to use the pronouns she and her, right? So cater to me. Because, like, I mean, it goes both ways. If you're going to say cater to you, I'm going to say cater to me.
Mm.
And that just becomes might makes right. Who's got the bigger team? Well, it turns out I have the bigger team, right? So, like, you're outnumbered. Sorry, if you want to play that game. So I'm just being silly, but that's how I deal with absurdity and nonsense. And I'm full of absurdity, contradiction, and nonsense myself. And I hope that if you see it, you'll poke fun at me in the same way, and hopefully that'll
See,
help.
probably I would like to be more silly about these
Yeah.
things. To be fair, I can feel like I can take it very seriously because sometimes I
Uh,
just look at the world with different things that are happening and like I really worry. But I think I
mm,
just naturally can have like my brain can be very very negative. So I think that's a bit of like
uh,
my tendency to just go into the worst case scenarios. I actually really wish that I could be more just like playful.
yeah.
And even like with the work that I do, like even this morning I got such a nasty email. I mean, it
Oh yeah.
wasn't nasty. It's
Uh,
basically so I get a lot of extremely inappropriate messages, and I'm always like,
uh,
why on earth would you think that it's appropriate to write something like that? It's just like goodness. So I get a lot of these things, and I get annoyed. Like I get
mm,
annoyed, and then I have a friend, a guy who also talks about sexuality, and he's just like he doesn't take personally any comments, nothing that's negative about him, and because he doesn't care, so he puts himself out there massively. So of course, a lot of people criticize him, and he's really like kind of nuts, and he just doesn't take it in, and I'm just sometimes like, wow, that's so impressive. So I'm learning
mm.
because I think when you become a public person and especially when you share your views, you're always going to be attacked and they're always going to be like absolute assholes just sending whatever comments they want to make. But yeah, I will just say that silliness that you have, I think that's the best way to deal with things, and hopefully I'll be able to develop more
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, a large part of my personal development, or if you want to call it that, comes from being married 28 years to my beautiful Greek wife. This is her passport photo.
Oh,
It's a passport
wow.
photo.
Wait, this is a passport. We cannot smile in Poland in our
I know. Well,
passport photos.
the passport photographer said we can't use that because he smiled, but she said, "Oh, can I have a copy anyway?" So,
Okay.
my wife really does not like not smiling for her passport photos. So even when her mouth is not smiling, her eyes are
It's
smiling. You
like
know what I mean? Smizing. But yeah, I mean she's a little bit vain, but she's very photogenic. But anyway, enough about her. But why was I talking about this? Oh yeah, the personal
that
transformation. Personal
yes.
transformation. Like, I used to be very, very, very shy and very, very sensitive, and I'm still sensitive and still shy. But my wife's very gruff, and she's Greek, so it's very blunt talk. Like direct, and she
Yes.
won't hold back. It's the Mediterranean way. So that's
Mm.
helped me to get a thicker skin and to have fun, to be more playful. And
Mm.
in 2016, I made this podcast, which is because I was a recent convert. I converted from atheism to Catholicism in 2009. So
Oh,
yeah,
I did not know this. This is
yeah,
very interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was an anti-Catholic, anti-Christian atheist for 25 years. So when I converted and I made my podcast, I got a lot of heat from atheists, from ex-Catholics and stuff like that, and just
Mm.
from people that don't like the Catholic Church and they have a distorted image of what it is and stuff like that. So because of my training through my marriage, I had thick skin
I
and I was
like
able to.
training, training through my marriage.
Yeah, it is. It's like with your friend. If you hang out with your friend and you observe your friend and you pick up on the tactics and the strategies, just subconsciously you're just going to absorb that, and I think it'll help because we can't be overly sensitive. I mean, there are very famous people who have very large followings, and like they shed tears over some of the hurtful comments because they haven't learned how to put it into
Mm,
perspective. So I mean, I think it's sad, and I think a lot of it actually is pride, based on pride. Like, well, who are you to insult me? I'm so precious and whatever. If you're more humble, if you know how worthless and disgusting you are, that's how I feel about myself.
mm,
Then, I'm not in a position to really think myself superior to any of my critics or any pedophile priests or whatever it might be. Like, I really don't think that I'm superior to them because I know myself. I know how low that I am in regards to my selfish desires and stuff like that. So
mm.
yeah, it's a work in progress, but I'm very happy to be a little bit liberated from that prideful self-concern about image and stuff like that.
And thank you for these words. I take it, kind of like a coaching for myself now. So
I'll
yeah,
send you the
thanks.
bill. I'll send you the bill. In a minute. So back to the topic of men. I want to talk about men and women before we dive into sort of relationships and sex and stuff like that. But I should buy you dinner first, I think. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, when it comes to men, like you've traveled mainly, I guess, Southeast Asia or Asia, is that right?
Yes, yes, Southeast Asia. Huh?
Okay. So that's not exactly an area of the world that I'm familiar with, but when it comes to meeting different men in different cultures, I'm sure you've traveled around Europe a little bit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
even
And
North America.
yes.
Okay, okay. So, yeah, how different are men when it comes to, men wanting women for sex or for marriage or for companionship or for friendship or whatever? How different are men in your experience? Are they really different, or do they all want the same thing and just the packaging is different, the salesmanship is different?
Um, I definitely see that this is hugely impacted by the culture. So if I think of Southeast Asia, places like Thailand or Bali, where there's a couple of things. So people have less, so it's like a less capitalistic
Ah,
nation.
yeah,
And it's not, and because culture is so different from all the like white countries,
uh,
all the like, we call this like Western culture.
yeah,
It's not really West, depending where you stand on the globe, but let's just say Western cultures.
yeah.
So for example, for in Asia, for Thai and Indonesians, our culture is so far away from theirs, and they have so much respect for their own culture that they're not impacted by what we do.
Ah,
Instead, they judge it.
ah,
So when they look at like what foreigners like me they do, it's not that it invites the locals to be more, I don't know, sexual, more open with some things and behaviors. Very often it actually makes local people feel like, oh, no, 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 we don't want that. And then passing different laws that like controls the behavior of foreigners rather than the other way around. I think, to be honest, this is my perspective. Like if you're asking what I think about this, I would say this. I think that the more affluent a country is, so the more capitalistic it becomes, it also means that then it's more about consuming things. I think the more we go in that direction, the more men are just looking for sex. Because if you think of it, sex is about just consuming, right? It's like I take, like, for example, uh, I have, okay, this phone here. I have two phones. This phone, I got it 3 years ago, and it's breaking. And it's breaking. I have an iPhone for the camera, right? But like, I should really replace this. I'm not, because I have a lot of important apps and I hate moving phones. But that's ridiculous. That's 3 years you have to change it. I got a new phone from my mom a year ago, and it's breaking. So the point is, we live in a culture where I consume it. Oh, stops working. Well, just throw it out, replace it. It's the culture of replacing things. Um, I don't know if you heard about this, but like I think in the 70s, I think 80s already not, but in the 70s, there's some products that were built in the
ah,
70s. And the problem was that they didn't break for like, many, many years. for about 40 years, and now people are like have some old watches and they cannot repair them because the company doesn't exist anymore. So we're actually what the companies do these days is that they put some mistakes, let's say, or errors, some problems into the product on purpose to make sure it breaks. So we're so conditioned to live our life like that. We're not looking for a dishwasher that's going to last your whole life. You're looking for a dishwasher for now, and you're perfectly okay changing it in 2 years. And so that approach really has impacted dating as well. So no one is ever good enough. I'm sure I can find better, or I'm just going to replace it, or I'm going to have multiple at a time. There's all of this freedom in dating. But if I look back even at the village that my mom is from, that of course hasn't been as exposed to that. If I look at the community in Thailand or Bali, I don't see that, right? I see people having more traditional values, like don't have the need to sleep around. They get married earlier. They have families earlier. But again, go to Bangkok. Bangkok is already more like the Western culture. Like even locals are way more promiscuous because again, Bangkok is a big city. So for me, the thing that impacts this, like externally, I think it's that. I think it's how much we're focused on consuming. And then we also want to consume sex, consume physical pleasure, and consume our partners.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a good point. I think it's called built-in obsolescence, planned
Yes,
obsolescence.
that is that. I was like, I do not remember what it's called, but
Planned
it's exactly
obsolescence,
that.
yeah. I was just thinking today actually about music and my consumption of music, and I was thinking, why, why do I like the music I like, and why do I seek more new music to discover? And I thought about, the novelty, like, hey, this is something new. I haven't heard this before. It's exciting. It's different. There's a surprise. What is this? And since my childhood, when I first heard classical music, I was like, what is this sound? Like just the
Mhm.
violins, the string section. It was like, what is this sound? You know, and it's that sense of discovery that's so important. And then I thought to myself about hookup culture, like Tinder or whatever these apps are. I don't use them, but um, it is exciting. It is very exciting for a man, not maybe not for a woman, but for a man to think about the next hookup or whatever. Like, I mean, I can fantasize about that. Like, just like it would be so cool to just get exciting and new sexual experience like every night of the week, right? I don't do that. I'm against that in theory, but I can understand why. Just like music, it's like, hey, have you heard the new song? And it's like, no. And then you hear it, it's like, wow, I've never heard anything like that. So I can understand why men hunger for a new sexual experience, a new partner. I can understand that. I mean, um, but at what cost? Because I've been married 28 years. I'm happily married, and there's a obviously, I mean, understatement. There's a depth to that love and that relationship and that commitment, and there's so much depth there that, I mean, it's just so shallow to bang a bunch of chicks, just for the sake of novelty. But at the same time, as men, and again, this is the difference between men and women. As men, we kind of want to spread our seed, if you could use the
Mm.
vulgar term. And women, I think, you can tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but women, I think, are looking to settle down and have a security and have a situation that's stable. Of course, you can find counter examples on both sides, right? I've always been very strongly monogamist. Like, I mean, I just want to, any woman that I was ever interested in, it was just like, future wife. Like, it has to be. I'm not interested in anything else, so there are definitely counterexamples, but
Mhm.
generally speaking, I think men like to sleep around, women want to find a guy and settle down. Talk to me about those stereotypes. Is there any
Mhm.
basis to it?
So I personally agree. This is what I am seeing as well. So with men, yes, I think there is this biological aspect of seeking novelty. Plus, in general, like you said, novelty is exciting. Like whatever is it's about, novelty is exciting. Period. And so we're always looking for more. We're always looking for new ways to express ourselves. So naturally, that's present in dating and relationships too. But I think the problem in general is that, well, when you look at men who really sleep around a lot, these are not good men because like these are very weak men, because these are men who give into craving. And there's this aspect of being able to delay gratification. And we have psychological studies, you know, the famous marshmallow study, but we have these studies that show that our ability to delay gratification is actually what determines our success in the future, whatever that success is for you. Because any success always comes with the ability to do the difficult thing, right? To do the thing you don't want to do, but you do it because there's a bigger reward in the future. And so if we don't have this capacity to do that, we end up being, you know, giving into cravings, into momentary pleasure, but we don't actually build anything, and we don't really make anything bigger out of our lives, which I also believe it's one of the fundamental, like, foundational needs for humans. I think we have the need to contribute, to leave legacy, to build something. And so if you're just focused on pleasure, 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 now, you don't ever get to build anything. And so what I see that is happening with men is that because it's so easy and it's so available for men to get whatever they want sexually, they lose mastery in that part of their life. And it gets to the point where men just want the easy thing. And if you think, like, so look, so for example, I used to live in Bali, and Bali, like, if you ever go to Bali, it's like, I feel like it's just the most beautiful men and women decided to go to one island and live there. So you just like, you look at them and it's just like, what? Like, wow, just wow, right? Absolutely incredible. And so me and a lot of other women would kind of, well, complain that it's really difficult to find a decent guy to date in Bali. Again, not that it's impossible, it's just difficult. But then I would say, look, if I was a guy and I was looking for a steady relationship, I wouldn't come to Bali. And if I was a guy and I came to Bali, where I'm surrounded by beautiful women who are available, why would I want to get into a relationship that requires me to take responsibility and put in some effort? I'm like, if I can have all the fun without any of that, I mean, I cannot blame these guys. It's like, it's so easy to just have fun. That's also why I decided to move out, because I'm like, okay, it doesn't serve my life and where I am now. But I do think that there are consequences of that. And so many people speak about, like, you know, that we have lost true masculinity. And that's why women very often are single. I will say, honestly, this is also my side. I see a lot of men that are not men. There are boys in a man's body, but they shy away from responsibility. Like, you cannot trust them. They're not steady. They're not solid, because they've given into so many cravings throughout their life, whether it's drinking, partying, sex, sugar, whatever it is, like, you know, just being on a sofa watching Netflix. We have lost this, like, men are not challenged enough. Men actually need their lives to be more difficult, not more comfortable. For women, it's different. Comfort is good for women, it balances our hormones, etc. But for a man, having too much comfort actually lowers your testosterone, it increases your estrogen, and then you don't feel manly, and women are not attracted to you. So I think there are really serious consequences of this hookup culture that we're starting to see now, but people are not yet connecting the dots enough. Now, at the same time, I won't say that a man needs to be like loyal. You have one woman for your whole life, because I understand it's difficult. And like you said, some men they want it, it's fine. But I also get it that it's difficult for men. So I guess, I don't know, every person needs to find their own balance. I'm definitely against cheating. Like, this is one thing that I'm like really hardcore. It's like, if you feel that you're not happy in the relationship, talk about it, because it's not fair that you're looking for a way out and you're not giving the same courtesy to your partner. So I'm very against cheating. But look, I don't want an open relationship, but there's so many different forms of opening a relationship. If both of you feel okay with this, consider that. But definitely this concept of just sleeping around, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. I feel like we went from very strict marriage focused mindset of relationships to like, screw relationships, screw any responsibility. There's this term, I don't know if you heard it, relationship anarchy.
Okay.
That's what I see a lot of people these days.
Yeah. Situationships or whatever they're called.
So fun, huh? So you haven't been in
Oh.
one, but trust me, oh, you're missing out.
No, I've never been in one. I've actually, I don't think I've ever been on a date per se. I don't think I've ever actually gone on a date. I mean, That idea repulses me. Like, hey, let's go and sit down at a restaurant, and I don't like restaurants. Let's go watch a movie. Well, I mean, I don't enjoy watching movies at the theater. I don't know if that's a thing anymore. I don't know if people. I don't know if movie theaters actually exist anymore. But back in my day, it was movie
They
theaters.
do exist, but I will tell you something. I hate dates as well. So I'm not on dating
Yeah.
apps. I had one date from the app from Tinder when it just like kind of became a thing.
Uh-huh.
I hate dates. I feel so uncomfortable. I love meeting people organically, and when we meet organically, like you're in each other's space. You get to kind of feel their energy. You see if you like them. But this whole idea that I'm sitting with a person that I know nothing about, absolute stranger, and I'm just like, what do you expect me to do? And I'm not someone who is attracted to someone just based on the looks. Like, looks for me are very important, but any person I ever liked, I was in their space for some time, and it was this energy. Like, it was the looks plus the energy that always worked on me. But there's plenty of guys, I first looked at them like, nah, not attractive, and then I liked them, but I had to hang out with them a bit more. So for me, honestly, I know people who are perfectly fine dating. It's really not my thing.
Yeah. Um, Thank you for that. I'm just thinking as you're speaking, I'm thinking about a couple of my friends who are men and they're lonely because they're now in their, their middle age, like frankly. I mean, I'm 53. But it's sad, it's really sad for the women who are aging and, they gave it away for free their whole lives and they just don't understand why they haven't got a committed relationship. That's
Mm.
really sad. But I want to talk more about the men who are older, and some older men, they're okay with that playboy lifestyle, that bachelor for life lifestyle. But I want to get your insight into someone who's middle aged, they're a man, and maybe they're sensitive and they want a partner, but the fact is that they're psychologically they're no longer fresh and innocent, and maybe they have some trauma because of the heartbreak and even the sexual stuff. I think is very dark for a human being to have multiple partners. No offense to you if you believe that it's okay, but that's my belief. I think it's like it's a very special intimate thing, and I've been with four women intimately, and to me that's three or maybe four too many. It's like it's like a very precious and special thing. So a lot of these men, like, yeah, they played the field and they had their girlfriends and whatever, but they're damaged. I think they're damaged by the intimacy that went wrong, and they're jaded and they don't have that innocence, and maybe they don't even have the energy and the like the sort of, like you talk about the novel. We talked about the novelty. When you are in puberty and just discovering the opposite sex, and it's so exciting, but fast forward 30, 40 years later, it's not the same. It's not the same context at all, right? So what do you tell to middle-aged men who uh they're sad, they're lonely, they're jaded, and but at the same time they still want to have a committed relationship, but maybe they feel invisible, or maybe they feel like the game is brutal today. What do you say to middle-aged men?
I'll start by saying that I actually think that men in their 40s and 50s, this is when they look the best. And this is
Ah,
your prime time,
ah,
because you're okay. There's so many men who in their 20s, they just look like babies. But when they get older, it's like you become handsome. So I actually think that
ah,
just physically, when it comes to
ah,
your features,
yeah,
that's the best age for a man.
yeah,
um, this is also the time when you've achieved something in life.
ah,
So you feel, first of all, you feel more comfortable as a man,
uh-huh,
right? Because you started building your kingdom, we could say, and you have some successes, and you have more stability in life. These are really good things.
uh-huh,
But I will say this: what I find is that when someone has had bad experiences, and that's true for both men and women, is that we start developing negative associations towards the other gender.
yeah,
So what I would be doing with these men is I would actually check in. It's like, hey, I have a feeling like you may like hate women.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
probably something like you think women are bad, that women are selfish, that women are superficial. I have a feeling that because of all these conversations now, that your experiences, I'm sorry, that you have a negative idea of what women are. And so as long as that's true, like how are you ever going to find a good woman if you believe that women are bad in some form? Like I'm simplifying it, but it's going to be some form of that, right? It can be phrased differently with a different adjective, but it's going to be something around that. So when I work with men, if I ever see that, what I help men to see is heal the dynamic, like heal the relationship with women in general. So we go back into what are the masculine gifts, what are the feminine gifts, and what happens. So basically, okay, look at it this way. This is more like a yogic or tantric explanation, but like, from yoga perspective, we talk about chakras and different energies, but there's certain energies that you as a man, you project. So that's like the masculine flow. And then there are certain energies that a woman projects. So one of the things is, if you look at our physical body, literally the physical body will tell you where we give the energy. So sexual energy is a gift of the man. And if you look at your physical body, your genitals go out of your body. The checking, yeah, it's still there. It's still doing that.
I
But
didn't
for
I
a
didn't get the
woman,
surgery. I didn't get the surgery yet. I'm still thinking it over. The government really wants me to get it. The government really wants me to get that surgery, but I'm thinking it over.
and then for a woman, right, my genitals, it goes inside of my body. So you give sexuality, I receive it. So sexuality, for example, is one of the gifts. For a woman, look at our breasts. We have breasts. So love is our gift. Yeah, don't look at my breasts. But so this is how women penetrate the world. Now, these are just two gifts, but there are more. So I help men understand what are your unique gifts as a man that you have to offer, not just to your partner, but to all the women and the whole world. I strongly believe. Now, okay, when I say sexuality, I don't mean sex. Let me just also
Okay.
be clear,
Oh.
because I think this is why I don't use the word sex. I use sexuality. It's so much more than that. But even notice how men sit. Like you guys often sit with your legs open and just kind of like, this is my power center. It's the energy. It's the energy. So so this is just an example, but I help men understand in what way you were made to contribute to this world. And if you don't share your gifts, you're blocking the exchange. So if you're not giving your masculine gifts, then a woman will not be giving her feminine gifts. And so now we also live in times where, again, I'm not a big fan of modern feminism. I think women took it too far. So now women don't want to share their feminine gifts because they think that it's somehow wrong or whatever. So basically, it's like, I'm not giving you anything and you're not giving me anything. And now good luck having any good relationship here, even a friendship. So to me, it's like, okay, stop thinking that women are ungrateful, that women just take, just forget about the story and start giving your masculine gifts to women, and and women will start opening up. Not all of them, because some are closed and some really are, whatever are those negative things that you think about them. Some women are really broken and hurt, like they have their own story to go through. But the more you share your gifts, the more you will feel that women will be opening up for you. Now, the second step to this is be actually open to receive that. So when I meet men who haven't had a relationship in a while, they're like desperate for that feminine energy. And it's not that they need sex per se. They just need that feminine radiance. This the beauty, the this gentle, soft energy, the caring, the nurturing, the love. That's really what they miss. And so I tell them, like, look, there are other women in your life, and you don't have to be sexual with them to receive that energy. Like, for example, you're going into a coffee shop and you're opening the door for a woman. That's your masculine gift. Yes, one woman will look at you like, I can open my own door. Well, by the way, what I tell men is to always say in this moment, like, I know you can open this door yourself, but it gives me pleasure to do it for you, and let her go. But there's going to be a woman who will, in return, smile and say thank you. This is her feminine gift. Actually, receive that. She just shared her feminine radiance with you. Be open to receive it. Because the more men notice these little moments of interactions, the less you will hate women and the less desperate you will feel for that energy. Because if you're desperate, then women feel, then it's not attractive. It goes both ways. It goes both ways. But
Yeah.
honestly, for me, it comes down at a certain point. I'm like, we really gotta heal the relationship with the other gender. Like we gotta start that flow of exchanging this energy, of exchanging our gifts again. Because right now it's like you're just, nope, I'm not gonna give you anything, and then no one wants to give anything, and we have to kind of reconcile.
Thank you for sharing all that. It's great insights. Um, I want to ask you something. It's like a personal sort of quirk that I have, and I don't know how common it is. Maybe you can tell me if it's common among men. But for me, one of the biggest turnoffs for a woman is if she likes me. Okay, like I want a woman that kind of doesn't like me. And I know women like the bad boys. I know that women like the bad boys, the a-holes and all that. I know that. That's for sure. Some of them, not all of them. But for me, like nothing is more of a turnoff than if a girl was all goo goo gaga for me. Like I've had women before I got married who were like excited by me, and they would come up to me and try to court me or whatever, and it's a total turnoff. It's a total turnoff. Like I want to chase someone who kind of could be eventually convinced to like me or whatever. Is that common among men, or am I unusual in that way?
Um, so it depends. I don't know you enough to
Uh,
be able to say, but there are two things that
uh,
are present here. So one is, if we have a low self-esteem, so
uh,
if we in some way feel that the way I am, I don't deserve love, then I feel that I have to chase love.
mm,
Because when love comes, I will push it away. No, 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 no. Because we're not familiar with healthy love. So all the toxic relationships, all the push and pull, right? Like all of that, it comes down to the fact that I don't believe, or I actually don't even know what healthy love is. So if this is why the big problem for people is that if you end up dating toxic people, why is it? Because when a healthy person comes up, you think they're boring,
yeah.
because the nervous system is used to these shoot
Mm,
ups, right? It's like
mm,
intense, very intense, and then it drops up and down, and we're used to that. And so if your nervous system is familiar with this, when healthy secure love shows up, it doesn't activate your nervous system, so it's unfamiliar, so you don't want it, because we always look for the familiar. So that's one story. Now the other story is that we, like humans, were motivated by a challenge, and dopamine, which is what drives us to take action, dopamine is only released when there is something I want and I don't have it. And so this is also the challenge of when you are in a relationship, because first you were chasing that person,
mm,
now you're together, especially if you're married, and then you're like, well, they're not going anywhere, we stop producing dopamine. So very often people just kind of settle down, and then they're like, stop desiring the partner, and
mm,
this is something we have to work with. So it is definitely the aspect of like, I want to chase. Like chase is fun. Chase is really fun, and it's present with so many other things. It's like a lot of people say, even when you're building your own business, it would be so boring if it just worked right away. You gotta have these obstacles. You gotta have this hero's journey. You got, like, when you work for something hard and then you get it, it feels so much better. And so I think that element is again a normal element. It is literally how nature designed us to find food, to find a mate, like make sure we survive, make sure everything works. Like this is our biology. Um, so that's what I'm saying. I don't know how much of which was true for you, but I
both,
would
yeah,
say
both
it
for
is,
sure, both.
yeah. And look, I will say that as a woman, if I think of myself, I also like this element of chasing a little bit, probably not as much as
Mm,
men, because I
mm,
think this also, as a society, and yeah, the way we live, it's like a man chases a woman, and there is still the aspect of the feminine attracts, right? I pull you in, but it's you who move. And there's so many like metaphors to this. Even sperm and the egg waits, and the sperm does all the work. So I think we're definitely kind of designed this way. But there's definitely, yeah, I think even if I think of myself, if someone like likes me way too fast, especially, it's also a bit of like, well, you don't know me yet. That's like that
yeah,
just doesn't sound really good. Wouldn't you first
yeah.
want to know me and then decide if you actually want me or not?
Yeah. Well, my friend has they got married, and the wife, I didn't know the woman, I knew the guy, but the wife put on the fridge a little fridge magnet that said, "You wanted me, now assume," like it's in French, but it's basically assume, now you have to live it, you have to deal with it.
Uh,
Like it's sort of like
yeah.
this sort of like, hey, how you wanted me, you got me, now
And now you have me.
deal with it. But I just want to mention that, the reason, treat them mean, keep them keen. The reason it works for me in my relationship is because, like I said, she's very gruff and blunt, and she's a special character. So it's like it's exciting every day. It's exciting every day. There's always that danger and that excitement and that need to try to figure out the puzzle. How can I please her? So I've been with quote unquote nice girls, like before. One of my four was a nice hippie girl. I always thought I wanted a hippie girl, but it turns out, no, I don't want a hippie girl. They're too
No, you
nice.
didn't.
They're too easygoing. I want a challenge. So I just want to throw that out there and mention that. But the other thing I want to mention is about women and the coyness. It's like,
Mm.
pretending to be, shy, or pretending to be reluctant, or, I mean, that's a major turn on. But I wonder how much of that is just theater, and they're like, okay, this is the move I have to make on the chessboard to get to the checkmate, and it's just like it's a self-conscious manipulation, really.
Mm.
Like, the Ken and Barbie sort of stereotypes, like, okay, men have to pump iron. Like I watch a lot of trashy reality shows and like Love Island, and it's like the men are pumping iron, they got their muscles, and it's like it's not what I find attractive, even in a man. Like I don't find that attractive, but a lot of the bimbos, they find that attractive. So the guys are doing that, and then the girls are, whatever, sort of bimbo style, and I don't find that attractive either. But there's a sort of element of role playing, like this is what's expected. And even when I met you, I thought, oh, she's cute, cute in the sense of like cute, like even with you, I sense that you've been raised, or socialized in a way where you have a certain cuteness, which is feminine. And I'm just wondering how much of that is authentic, how much of it is just a habit, right? So I mean, that's a very personal, sort of a prod at you, but just talk about the theater that men do it, women do
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in the feminine side. Are women aware of the games they're playing, the theater that they're doing, and they're laughing behind the men's back? Like, you know what I mean? What's up with that?
So I think this is a very interesting conversation and a great question. And are women aware that they're doing?
Yeah.
I think some are and some are not. You know, I love, there's this quote from Carl Jung, and I really love it. And he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will dictate your life and you'll call it fate. I may be, I don't know, I usually like change the quotes, but the point is that we like there's some forces that guide our behavior and we think that this is how it's meant to be, or this is God guiding me, while it's actually your subconscious. It's all your old beliefs and the patterns, but because you're not aware of them, you don't realize that it's your subconscious beliefs that guide your behavior. So definitely many women for sure believe that I am just like that, or that's how it's meant to be, it's natural, and they don't realize that this behavior is actually a trauma response. So much of our behavior, like for example, you even mentioned, right, like wanting to chase a woman, right? So much of our behavior, either to a tiny degree or like a big degree, it's basically a trauma response, which means we experienced some sort of pain when we were very young and we didn't know how to cope with this. So we started developing these different mechanisms to survive. And then we take them into adulthood and we think, oh, this is just, I am like that. That's my personality. And I think it's really difficult to separate what is your personality and what is just the trauma response. What is the defense mechanism that we developed over the time? So when you ask me, for example, I would have two answers for you. So one is that this is my energy, that's my personality type, and the other one is that I'm my daddy's little girl. So I learned, like I get so one of our parents, we strive for their love more. And every person will be able to say, yeah, that's the parent that I felt like I had to fight to get their love more. For me, that was my dad. My dad wasn't really present when I was little. I felt it. And so I really wanted his love. And I only realized that when I moved to Asia. Like I was in the US, nope, not far enough. When I went to Asia into a whole different culture, that's when I started realizing things. But my most of my life, I was very close to my dad because we're very similar, like similar views, like just sometimes when you have it, like parents and kids, and like it's like a copy of one of the parent. Only what I realized later is that it wasn't my truth. I created this persona, a daughter that was so similar to him because through that I got the relationship. And in fact, I was way closer to my dad than my brother. My dad never really understood my brother. So now when I lived in Asia, I started realizing I'm not actually as much as my dad as I used to think. I'm way more like my mom that I didn't allow myself to accept. And I started changing. And ever since, my relationship with my dad hasn't been very good because
Ooh.
now he's like, I don't know who you are. Like he doesn't know me because he thought I was just like a mini him almost. And now these new things come up and he doesn't know how to deal with this. So you could say that, hey, the strategy I developed worked because we were very close for as long as I was very similar to him. So again, but I think I was like my late 20s or around, yeah, close to 30 when I realized that. So that's, like it took me a chunk of my life to get this awareness. And some people don't ever get this awareness. So back to the different games that women play. Yes, I am aware for me, it's been a strategy to get what I want in life and to make sure that I'm being protected and safe, etc. And definitely a lot of women do that. Again, consciously or not consciously, but it's like, this little girl, because then you will step up and you will take care of me. Then there's also the fact that, and I see this, and that's I'm also like trying to find a new way through all of this. But when we see strong women, a lot of men feel intimidated by this. So then women don't want to show that
Uh,
because like they want to make sure that you feel like a man. I actually want to first have a chance with you maybe before I show you how capable I am. So there is this aspect as well. And yes, absolutely. This is the whole flirting game. And so here's, for example, what I also want to make a like separation between two concepts. There's one thing when a woman pretends to be weak or actually um, acts as a weak, incapable woman because she's playing this game, because I think it doesn't serve her. Like you're making yourself smaller than you are. There's no self-love in that. There's one scenario. Another scenario is pure manipulation, like when you do it with kind of bad intentions. But then there is such a thing as polarity. And polarity is what creates sexual desire. So basically, it's about a man feeling like a man and a woman feeling like a woman. I love flirting. For me, flirting is just this. It's a game. It's not that I want to get anywhere. Like it's not that flirting needs to lead to something. It's just allowing ourselves this playful interaction where you feel like a man and I feel like a woman. And so I sometimes get into this energy not because I want anything from a man, but simply because I like it. It's kind of fun to feel that polarity, that you're like the strong one and now I'm just kind of just like that, I can relax, I can surrender, and I can just lean on you. That feels really good to both men and a woman. I
that's
know it's like a
amazing.
long a
No, that
long
was good.
answer to
That
your
was very
question.
good. That was very good. Lots of insight, lots of insights there, and lots of other questions that come to mind. I was just thinking, one of the things I was thinking about as you were speaking was, you know, the Victorian era in England, late 1800s, and you know, this sort of sexual or romantic connotations around that, and different eras. You know, got the flappers in the 20s and 30s, whatever, in America and elsewhere, and just this, of course, the 60s. And if you think about, we talked about culture and geography and different norms and mores and stuff like that, but there's also time. There's also that sort of voyage through time and the different eras. Can you just reflect briefly on some of that, and what does that teach you? Maybe it confirms some of your hypotheses. Maybe it's food for thought for some of your research. But what about that? Different eras in time
Mm.
and the relationship with sex, marriage, and flirting and everything else, and clothing, the whole thing.
Well, so I'll be honest, it's not something I have particularly researched, as in like the
Yeah.
different areas. I've looked at it more as a wave and how certain concepts have evolved. So I will be honest, my perspective is that we have suppressed sexuality, and I don't think it's healthy. So sexuality became kind of like a commodity. Like a woman had to be a virgin, but it wasn't in any way because we cared about health. It's because a wife was a property, and you needed to make sure that your kids are your kids. So the intentions behind all of it was not really good for women. And for so many generations, if you think of this, it was fairly okay for a man to cheat and have other lovers, but if a wife had a lover, she could even be killed. So it was very uneven for so many generations, and I think that is not okay. Um, the fact that a woman, okay, there's this joke, and I actually don't think it's funny, but the joke goes like this: if a lady says no, she means maybe. If she says maybe, she means yes. If she says yes, she's not a lady. So now I know it's funny, but here is where I have an issue with this. Even though I know it's a joke and I know it's funny, but here's the problem. For so long, a woman didn't have a boundary, because it's exactly this. A woman wasn't allowed to say yes. So she had to kind of play, again, this is where you said, like, she had to kind of play the games like, oh, no, 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 I don't want to. So a woman, for example, couldn't say that she liked a man. She couldn't say that I wanted to have sex. Like, she had to play the no, I don't want to, I don't want to. And the man had to convince her. So it was like, because if a woman ever said this herself, she would be like, yeah, you're not a lady. So now the problem is that a woman never had a space like a no. And we have this issue until today. When a woman says, no, I don't want to have sex, and a man thinks that, oh, she wants to have sex. She just wants me to take the first step and like, convince her. And these days, where women are allowed to say yes, would be not, and many women are not okay with this still. And I think we really should learn this, because your no is not gonna be like, it's not gonna mean anything unless you can also say yes. So I think this is something that's been changing. We're still not where we should be, but I think this is one of the things that's good that we are trying to change with time. I personally also, I'm not necessarily saying that we should all be naked all the time, but I do believe that, certain periods of time where showing your ankles was inappropriate. For me, that it's too much. I think, like, I love when my body can breathe. It's like I would not be able to survive fully covered. So I think this obsession with the naked, like, yeah, with not being able to be naked or just like half naked, in my opinion, that's not really healthy, doesn't support us. Not to mention that just looking at health, covering our genitals so much with underwear, it actually causes a lot of like physical issues and some diseases and infections. So it would be nice if we could breathe a little bit more. Also, the breast, like, nature didn't design us to wear bras. Like, breasts should be loose and breathe again. So I think for me, the fact that like we need to cover this, it's a bit, I personally have an issue with this. I don't think it really does a lot of good. So there's definitely changes that have happened over the time, which I think are good. And also the fact that, like, for women having more space, being more equal in sexuality, I think this is good. But what I'm kind of seeing, what happens is that when we take things too far, then usually what we do, it's like a pendulum, we swing the other way, but we again take things too far. And I think we're in a phase where we have taken things too far the opposite way. And eventually, like a swing, it's going to bounce right and left and right and left until it finds its middle point. So I think it's good what we're doing is that we're voicing the problems. For example, the whole Me Too movement. I think it went too far, but it's based on reality. Like, again, I told you, like, I get really nasty messages from people, but you have no idea how much I get. Like, I
What
don't talk about it.
are they criticizing you because you have too much license, or are they criticizing you because they want to
Okay,
sexualize
I'm
you?
gonna give I'm gonna give you an example. Like someone responded, like, I have my newsletter, and I get this response saying like, "Oh, Magda, I just want to tell you, I just want to lick your pussy, and
Oh,
I
okay,
wanna
okay, okay,
like
okay,
things
okay,
like
okay.
this." Listen, I get on a discovery call where it says, "Hey, if you want to work together, right? We can get on a discovery call. And so I get on a Zoom and the guy's camera is off. And so I'm like, hey, can you turn your camera on? He's like, yes, yes, I'm doing this. I'm like, okay. And he starts saying something. I'm like, can you turn your camera on? He's like, yes, yes, yes. But I just want to say, I want to fuck your pussy. Like, so the point is, men don't know how much of that women are exposed to.
Yeah.
So when I say any of this, men have the same reaction as you, right? So we don't talk about it, but we are being sexually harassed nonstop. So I think there's been a lot of like with the whole Me Too movement, I think it's good it happened to bring awareness. But again, I think we went too far. So I think we as a society, I think we struggle with balancing things. So we're seeing changes that are happening over time. And I think the changes are happening from a good place. We're picking things that are unhealthy, that are toxic, or where it's just not fair, and we want to change them. I just don't think we have found the best answers yet. So that's how I look at the change through time.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. You shared a little bit too much, but thank you for sharing anyway.
Censor that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm very loose with the content, and there's a lot of trash talking that takes place on my show. So, but I do want to I just want to say for the record, because I've let you sort of present your point of view as I always do, and which I love to do. That's what my podcast is all about. But I just like to throw in a little bit of my perspective as a Catholic. As I said earlier, sexuality is one of the most precious things, but it's very sacred, very holy, and it's chaste. Sex is chaste, and all the perversion. I mean, there's so much perversion that sometimes people get confused about what's right and what's wrong. But in the Catholic Church, it's very clear. I mean, you may find it stifling, a little bit old-fashioned and stuffy, but for me, that's where the true freedom is in reality. And the reality of sex is, it's supposed to be a committed relationship, and mutual self-giving, and open to life, and all these sorts of things, as the Catholic Church teaches. It's the most beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful teachings of the Catholic Church, is the sexual morality. A lot of people misunderstand it. They make fun of it. They don't like it. They think it's going too far, and they may have some image of Victorian moral strictness or something like that, but not at all. It's a very organic, natural, loose, and free thing. Like the whole point of true religion is freedom, right? Freedom and joy and peace and health and beauty and generosity and life, and it's all good. But there's the stereotype of Christians and of Catholics, and the stereotypes are fueled by perverts in the church, and by pedophile priests, and by those who are repressed. And we're not supposed to be repressed. We're supposed to be fully alive and fully well adjusted, and in good, healthy relationships, all kinds of relationships. Meaning not only romantic relationships, but just other healthy relationships. But yeah, so I just want to put it out there, because I let you give your side of the story, but there's also my side of the story, which is that the world has its ideas, and a lot of your ideas, I think, are worldly, but a lot of your ideas also are Catholic. So it's a mixed bag, and it's the same thing with me. Like, I mean, a lot of my ideas, my intuitions, and my actions are worldly. That's just the way it is. So it's not a put down. It's just reality. And unless you're a saint, you're going to be a mixed bag. You're going to be a mixed bag. But we didn't really get to talk about Saint Mary Magdalene. But you said you had something. Someone came up to you and told you something. What was that?
So see, okay, so this is where we will probably disagree, because
Uh,
I don't think she was a prostitute. She was
oh.
I so okay. Now this is a bit new agey, I will say, and I am not really new agey. I was in this community. I won't lie, but I moved away and just kind of have my own path through all of this. But according at least to the new age kind of philosophy, and I don't know if you heard it. I'm actually curious, because it's a bit like a path that believes in that. So the belief is that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene, and that they were practicing Tantra, and that he had children and multiple lovers. And so that they were actually practicing sacred sexuality. and that apparently Jesus traveled to India and received also yoga teachings from India. So there's this whole path that like looks at that. So I was with a woman who followed that philosophy. And so she told me that you have this energy of Mary Magdalene. Now I'll tell you in my words. The idea here is that in a lot of cultures, we've had priestesses that were working with sexuality. And there are some cultures where a boy, when he was coming of age and getting ready to be married, he would actually go and spend some time with such a priestess, and she would initiate him to the arts of sacred sexuality. And so when you talk about this lineage of Mary Magdalene, this is kind of the concept that it's talked about. So the priestesses that were working with sexuality. Now, I cannot tell you 100% whether this existed or not. I'm just sharing one of the paths, one of the, yeah, I guess philosophy. This is probably the best word for this, that exists and that some people follow. So when I was chatting to you before that, yes, someone told me that I carried the energy of Mary Magdalene. What I would say they were referring to is that I do talk about sexuality. Now, I don't initiate anyone into sacred sexuality like this. Definitely not. I mean, for some people, I'm just a sex worker. I do not do any of that. I help people heal trauma around their sexuality and form healthy relationships. I do not have any involvement with my clients whatsoever. But mostly the idea with all of this is that sexuality is sacred, and basically it's about adding the sacredness into sexuality. Just not look at sex as just like physical act, as something, that you release stress, um but something bigger, something that can connect you to the whole universe. And in Tantra, it's also believed that it can connect you to God, that you can have these deep experiences if you practice sacred sexuality. So that sexuality that it's not just about desire. It's much slower. It's longer. It you experience massive opening of the heart. And I'm speaking now from my experience. I have had like glimpses of unconditional love. I don't mean love we feel as humans. I really mean this divine unconditional love. And I had probably my deepest spiritual experience of oneness with the whole universe while practicing sacred sexuality. So this is like the philosophy of the Mary Magdalene here.
Uh,
I'm so curious about your point of view.
well, I'm well aware of this. It's like Dan Brown popularized a lot of these ideas in his books and stuff like that, and so like I'm very well aware of it. And I told you I was atheist for 25 years, from age 14 to 39. And later, in that journey of atheism, I was deep into the New Age. I was traveling around Europe doing tarot card readings to support myself and my
Okay.
wife, and very deep into the New Age. Always skeptical of it, but the fun thing about the New Age is it's a smorgasbord. You just choose what you like, and you leave aside the stuff you don't like. That's the New Age. But there's that Gnostic root to it always, where we are spirit, and ultimately, we're the one being, the one mind of God or Buddha or whatever you want to call it. All these Eastern ideas are adapted to the New Age in a sort of pell-mell or hodgepodge way, and it's not very coherent, really. But it's a fascinating and interesting lifestyle, because there is that sense of adventure and build your own lifestyle and your own perspective, and there is that excitement also with this idea of sacred sexuality. Not that I didn't experiment with that. I was not, I'm far too prudish for that. But a lot of people I think are attracted to that. Like I've interviewed people that belong to UFO cults, like the Raelian cult here in Montreal. It was founded by a Frenchman from France, but they believed in aliens and all these sorts of stuff, which I don't believe in. But they would have sex orgies allegedly, and a lot of sexual a lot of cults have a sexual element to them, and so that's attractive. And I see the New Age as sort of, generally speaking, smiling on sexual license, as opposed to sort of the more mainline monotheistic religions are very cautious about sexuality. So yeah, obviously, needless to say, I don't buy into the fact that Jesus had sex or that he ever masturbated or anything like that. Like, I believe that he was a virgin, his mother was a virgin, his father was a virgin. I believe that virginity is higher than marriage, and certainly higher than hit it and quit it hookup culture. But yeah, I did want to mention to you, we're gonna have to wrap it up here, but I did want to mention to you that in Catholic theology, there's this nuptial mysticism where it's all about sacred sexuality with God Himself, like that intimacy that we have ultimately with God, and that, you know, as the family is a reflection of the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph when they were on Earth. So intimacy and sexuality is between man and wife is also a mirror or a shadow of heaven, because heaven is going to be that ultimate intimacy. So I wanted to let you know, like, even though I'm prudish and maybe neurotic about sex, not that the church is neurotic, but I'm neurotic. You know, there is a sacred sexuality that we Catholics have access to, and that is the ultimate. That is the ultimate goal, is to enter into that bliss, you know, and that union and that intimacy, and, as you said, the unconditional love. So I just wanted to let you know that.
If I can add here, so something that happens often when people hear that, I don't use the word tantra very often because of connotations that people have with that. But I'll give you a few examples when I say that I do tantra. For example, recently, this guy messaged me and said, like, "Oh, it's so good to hear you do tantra. I also practice polyamory." So the point is that people think that sacred sexuality and tantra is about that. Now, a lot of this in the world is about this, that in a way, polyamory, open relationships, sex parties equal tantra, like people do equate these two. But you can be a tantrika and be monogamous, you can be a virgin and be a tantrika, you can be celibate and be a tantrika. And I think this is what people, again, like, I think there's, for example, from my side, I think there is a lot of misunderstandings. Like you were talking about misunderstandings towards the church and like certain like just way of being, way of life. And it's the same here. There's a lot of assumptions. And so, for example, sacred sexuality, and definitely the way I look at it, is in a way inviting the element of God or spirit, or again, whatever you want to call it. But sex is not just a physical experience. And that's really what I want to teach people, is that it's a sacred experience. And when it's a sacred experience, for example, you don't just sleep with anyone, because your souls are merging into one, and you're going to take pieces of the energy of the other person into your body. So you really should be mindful who you want to have this experience with. But definitely this aspect of really feeling love. And like I said, I had personally an incredible experience, but I could have it because it wasn't just sex the way we think of this. It was like almost like I could say like a meditation or a prayer. And that's available to everyone, because that is not a religious concept, right? It's not a new age concept. It's not a Catholic concept. It's really a spiritual concept, as in I can experience God through everything. I can experience God by how I drink my water, if I choose to. It's about the level of presence and love, and how much I'm open to the experience. So everyone can have a much deeper experience of sexuality. And again, even if you're not having sex with someone else, you can still feel the sense of aliveness in your body. Because really what sex is about merging of the energies into one. It's the sense of oneness, which is the ultimate, experience of God. And so to me, this experience, we can have glimpses of that experience throughout our daily lives. And sexuality is one of those ways. So that is really what sacred sexuality is, in my opinion.
I just want to ask really quickly, do you believe in reincarnation?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's a good answer, because you know, I'm very disappointed and saddened when people believe in reincarnation. It just bothers me. But if you're not sure, that's better than saying yes, of course. But I've even met Christians who believe in it. It just bothers me. But you know, no judgment on those who believe in it. You know, I just interviewed a Hindu guy, and he obviously believes in it, and I just find it tragic. But it's just one of my personal hang-ups, you know. But I've got a couple of quick fire questions before we wrap up here.
Okay, let's do it.
Just give me your sort of like pros and cons of these different things I'm going to throw out your way, and they may seem connected or they may seem disconnected. But masturbation, pornography, prostitution, and abortion. Just what are your thoughts on those four?
Okay, go one by one. What was the first one?
Masturbation.
Nothing against it unless you become addicted to it. I think I would call it self love, like self pleasure. So actually make sure it's pleasant and not just jerking off. But I am big fan of masturbation.
Okay. Porn and pornography and prostitution. I'll put those two together.
Okay, for me, very different. Pornography, 90% bad. What is good about it is that I think people don't talk about sex enough, and this can be a way to start having a conversation. So if you pick something that you really like and you want to watch it with your partner as part of enriching your sex life, yes, but most of it, no, because it gives instant gratification to men. It actually messes up your testosterone because a man should not get a reward without putting any effort. This is bad for your sense of masculinity. Not to mention the whole business of pornography, which is absolutely toxic. It's really abusive towards women. So, like as a business, massively against it.
And then the
Uh, prostitution. You
prostitution.
said prostitution.
I hope you know that the word pornography just means like porne means prostitute, so it's very deeply
Oh,
connected.
no, I didn't know this actually. No. So prostitution. Look, I honestly don't think.
Sex workers as they're called today.
No, I'll say I said specific prostitution. I don't think that a woman who truly loves herself and has her needs met and really deeply believes that she's deserving of everything she desires, I don't think that such a woman would be using her body and her sexuality as a product. So I know that a lot of women say like, no, it's about freedom, so we can do what we want. I honestly, again, there are exceptions. Maybe there's a few who really have a different like energy type and personality type, but I think vast majority is just really traumatized. And again, horrible business behind it. Absolutely horrible business behind it.
Yeah.
The whole industry,
Oh yeah. And then finally, abortion.
abortion. All in all, I am for it. However, what I don't like is how uh, we started treating it like we stopped respecting it. I think it's a really big deal for a woman if she chooses to do it, and I
Have you
think it
had an
should be
abortion?
treated like this. No,
Oh,
but I
okay.
will tell you that I for many years I have felt that if I got pregnant, it would mean the end of my life. So I as a woman I want to be able to choose, and I wouldn't want to be forced to have a child if I don't want this child because I'm gonna hate this child. Like I'm not gonna be a good mother, and we're just gonna have two broken people. So I am for abortion, but I definitely don't support things like there's some videos of women like making parties celebrating the abortion. I think that is again taking it too far in my opinion. So I think it's a really big deal, and I think it should be done with a lot of understanding. It's not like, oh, because I don't want to use a condom, so I'm just going to get an abortion. I think it should be treated like a big deal, which I think some women are not right now.
Yeah. So this is a sort of a dark. I don't want to end on this dark note. It's just so dark. For me, it's dark anyway. So let's change the subject and wash our consciousness is clean from all this dark stuff because it is very seedy. You know, the underworld of pornography, prostitution, and I think abortion. But what is the what's the sort of a hopeful message, something positive that you can leave the listener with, and you know, talk about the good stuff.
Sure. So I actually had this conversation with a friend like just a few days ago, and we're talking about intimacy and what is intimacy. And for me, intimacy, it's about how deeply you experience life. And intimacy always exists in a relation. And so we think of intimacy as I only can get it from my partner. But so many people are single. Even like you mentioned, some of your friends are like, men like in their 40s and 50s. And I think especially these days, it's like a pandemic of loneliness. And so a lot of people are stuck. I'm lonely. I cannot meet anyone. And I really would like to remind everyone that that feeling of loneliness, it has little to do with having a partner because there's so many people in really bad relationships. That sense of feeling connected and belonging is really within, and everyone has access to it. So you can have this feeling through building the connection with yourself, with other people, so not just your partner, but with all, like you mentioned before, all the relationships. And lastly, with whatever you call it, God. I like to call life, just say like relationship with life, but this is relationship with God, universe, again, whatever a person feels good with. And I honestly feel like we sometimes underestimate the value of all of these sources of how they can make us feel really good in life. And I think something that you have is a very strong connection to God. And sometimes when I see a person, like, because there's so many people who unfortunately go to church but they don't feel it. It's like my grandma, unfortunately, she just had to go every Sunday. But when you sometimes see a person who really feels the faith, you can see the bliss in their eyes. You can just see it and feel it. And that bliss is really available to all of us, regardless of your life path. For me, I find God in nature the most. And there are specific elements of nature where I find that bliss. And I would just say follow the bliss. Like, out of everything in life, look for bliss because it's available. Like this is what we're made of. This is what, in my opinion, the whole life is made of. Look at the bliss. And the bliss, it's not about whether you're in a relationship or not. It's not about how much money you make or where you live. Bliss is the essence of life. And in my opinion, if we just focused a bit more on that, we'd be less lonely, would be happier, and we would also have, as a consequence, better relationships with others.
So thank you so much. So yeah,
Is that a is
that
that
was
a
a
good
nice
positive
positive.
note to
Yeah, of
add?
course, of course, of course. But I do have another question for you. I do have a, well, it's more of a comment. It's more of a comment, but you can respond to it. Curious to get your response to it. But I meditate on on many things, prayers and meditations every day. But one of my favorite meditations is the Ten Commandments, which I'm sure you're roughly familiar with. But the first commandment is all about God, that we put God first and we love God uh, in our thoughts. And the second commandment is loving God in our words, and the third commandment is about loving God in our deeds. And then the following commandments are all about the parallels to those three commandments, but with respect to our neighbor. So when I think about the first commandment, it's paired up with the ninth and 10th commandments. And the ninth commandment is don't covet your neighbor's wife, and the 10th commandment is don't covet your neighbor's oxen. And so what that really means is that we don't desire intimacy where it's inappropriate, and we don't desire to take the power where it's inappropriate. So our power and our intimacy has to be in God, not in our neighbor's ox, which is this powerful farming tool, or in our neighbor's wife, which is this powerful temptation to intimacy. So I just want to bounce this idea off you about divine sexuality, divine spirituality, or spiritual sexuality, whatever it's called, where the, the the challenge is to, yes, we have to be in the world. If you're called to marriage, then you're going to have intimacy and power in the family. As a man, you've got a role to play. As a woman, you've got a different role to play. But the connection between power and intimacy is very obvious in the case of rape or domination. I'd forget what it's called. These games where people dress up in leather or whatever it's called,
Okay,
BSDM
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever it is. There's this element of power and intimacy, and it's a perversion of what we're actually made for. We're made to rely on the power of God and to crave intimacy with God. And albeit we are in the world, so we're going to have real relationships with our neighbors, romantic relationship with our spouse, and different kinds of relationship with our parents, children, police officers, school, whatever. But maybe just very briefly respond to that and talk about, even though we've already touched on most of the relationship between power and intimacy, just in the context like I've given you with the first commandment and the ninth and 10th
Mm.
commandments. Does that bring anything to mind for you?
So, by the way, first of all, it's interesting because the 10th commandment in Polish,
Uh,
so it says that don't desire your neighbor's wife, and the 10th goes, and none of their things. So we
okay.
don't specify what it is, we just say
Ah,
things. I didn't know this in
ah,
English. That's so interesting. But
ah,
so I'll be honest with you. When I look at these two commandments, I don't look at it through the lens of intimacy. The way I
ah,
understand it is that don't desire something that someone else has,
ah.
because the world is abundant and God is abundant, and you're going to receive everything you need and desire. and want. Like God will
Okay.
provide for you, so you don't have to steal from someone else. This is your neighbor's abundance. Like you're gonna have yours. You're gonna, like, it's like, so you don't have to steal this. So this is the way I look at it.
I see.
But speaking of sexuality and power, absolutely. I don't know if because I don't think I've given it enough thought to really understand that connection. Something that's coming to me now is that a lot of sexuality, especially this more animalistic sexuality, it's about taking and possessing and penetrating. And that is really how we talk about power, right? Power is about taking, like you take power, you know, power possesses you. And I think just energetically it's similar. So I think maybe this is something about that. It's like, especially for men, it's like you want to possess a woman. So maybe this is a little bit where it comes from. Plus, again, if we look at the fact that women used to be looked at as possession, like it was like how many, and I mean, maybe not in Europe. I don't think it was ever really a big thing in Europe. But if we look outside of Europe, it's like, how many wives do you have, or how many courtesans do you have, and how many camels do you have, right? So I think it was also in some way, it will also say a lot about your position, your power. So yes, it is connected. But I will be honest, you're inspiring me to give it a bit more thought to actually, like, actually understand it a bit better.
Do women
Because
sorry, go ahead. Complete your
I was
thought.
just going to say, because it's a different thing that I combine it as like I'm experimenting with element of power in the bedroom. That's different. That's just like, I can experiment with many things in the bedroom. So I don't think it's just that. I think it's bigger. It's bigger. I think there's a very strong connection. I just haven't explored it really.
I'm prone to what I call the demons of lust. From time to time, will get sort of inundated with sort of sexual fantasies, sexual dreams. Just last night, I had a wet dream. It happens to me a lot, but intermittently. Okay, and part of it is if I allow myself to sort of like look at stuff I shouldn't look at. Just in the culture, like it's just everywhere. Sex is everywhere. Sex sells, so like that's just everywhere. So it's I have to be aware of that and try not to try not to look at all the stuff that's around me. But it's my fault. But I am a full-blooded man too, so that's like part of it's natural, just sort of like this desire or whatever. And I'm wounded and broken, and so there's all that healing that needs to take place. But in any case, you know, part of it is part of the darkest side of the sexual fantasies that come to me involve like I guess violence or a rape or whatever. It's like just like it's disgusting. But I'm just wondering, like I've talked to a few people about it and they said that that's not uncommon among men, but I'm just wondering if women, I mean, it's a very delicate subject, but I'm just wondering if women, I think it's dark and disgusting and demonic, but would women ever fantasize about being raped? I mean, it's a very delicate subject. Sorry to even have to ask you this, but
So women don't necessarily fantasize about being raped, but it is meant to be actually women's most common sexual fantasies, to be taken and dominated, and often it feels a little bit like against her will. But here is where people don't fully understand that just because you fantasize about it doesn't mean you would actually want to experience that. I think that really needs to be separated very clearly for people.
yeah,
What they also say is that a lot of our sexual fantasies, it's a way of coping with trauma.
yeah,
So if, for example, there's any story about power, let's say if in childhood you were overpowered, you couldn't say anything, like your parents were very strict and you didn't have any freedom, you may have a sexual fantasy where you are dominating someone. So you want to play the opposite, or where you get dominated because you're basically replaying the same dynamic from childhood. So for me, for example, sexual fantasies can be very interesting because if we look at them from a different lens, not as something that you actually want to do, but if you look at like, hey, what am I trying to heal? What am I trying to like understand about myself through that scenario? So for me, these can be really powerful insights. But if you look at women, for example, why this is a big fantasy, let's go back, like you said, also, like, I'm a man, it's biology. If you look at just nature and animals, it's usually the male that takes the female. So that is a bit of like just like you said before, like you like the chase, right? You like to have to kind of fight for your woman. We like to be chased as well. So there's this element that I kind of run away, but you catch me. and that's like a sexual fantasy. Now again, in our head, it can go to the extreme. No woman wants to be raped, like absolutely no. But it's this, like, if basically it's like this: I like you, right? But I'm not gonna tell you I like you, and then you have to like chase me. That's the ultimate fantasy.
Mm.
But like, I need to actually want the guy. No woman wants to be chased by
Yeah.
the guy that she doesn't like.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Back to, and we'll wrap it up because I do have another interview coming right up. But it's fascinating, fascinating talking with you. And I hope I didn't make you feel too awkward with any of my questions. But this last one is PG. It has to do with the Ten Commandments. I'm a little bit surprised and delighted that you still remember what the 9th and 10th commandments are.
To be fair, I don't know if I remember all 10.
I was gonna ask you, can you just take a stab at it? Take a stab at it. Come on, let's try. Let's try. Let's try. I want to give you a score out of 10. Okay, so let's see how many you can name. Let's
but
do
no,
it.
but you have to understand. But I only ever learned them in Polish.
That's okay.
Nie będziesz miał bogów cudzych przede mną. Nie będziesz brał imienia Pana Boga swego nadaremnie. Okay, I'm messing up the order. Nie kradnij, nie zabijaj, nie pożądaj żony bliźniego swego, ani żadnej rzeczy, która jego jest. I got 6.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'll tell you in English, okay? So
yes, I actually, what? I've never heard them in English. I don't think I ever
never
have.
heard them in English?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I will not give you my colloquial like how I phrase it, because I phrase them a little bit differently. So I'm going to read you the exact Ten Commandments so I don't mess it up. I know what they are, but I have my own colloquial way of saying them. And we'll just see what you think about this. You'll look it up. New.org. Here we go. So, oh, that's not a list. Let me see if I can find the actual list. Okay, so there are many different renditions, but this is a typical one. I the Lord am your God, you shall not have any other gods beside me. That's number one. Number two, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Number three, remember to keep holy the Sabbath day.
Okay, I forgot this one. Yes.
Yeah. Number four, honor your father and mother, which is really all authority figures, really. And it also applies to parents towards their children, to have the proper relationship. Number five, you shall not kill. Number six, you shall not commit adultery. Number seven, you shall not steal. I think you listed those quickly. Yes. The short ones that you listed. Number eight, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbors. That's to do with lying and stuff like that.
Yes.
That's a big one. That's a big one. That's a very common one to violate. And of course, number 9 and 10, not coveting your neighbor's wife, or and this one phrases it: you should not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. So they sort of gave you that.
Okay. This translation.
I gave you the more biblical one, But it's very interesting because these are 10 commandments, but they could be broken down into 6. I like to break it down into 6, and then I could break that further down into two groups of 3. Like the 6 is 2 groups of 3, so I can break it down just into the 2, and ultimately there's only one commandment, which is love. So it's food for thought. There's a lot of food for thought in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. There's a whole section. Of the 4 sections, 1 section is dedicated just to the 10 commandments. So there's a lot of nuanced application, and of course it's any moral situation, any dilemma that you find yourself in, what's the right thing to do, we can always narrow it down to one or more of the 10 commandments that is applicable there. So it's really fascinating stuff, thinking about virtue ethics, morality, and these sorts of things. Have you looked into not only religion, but have you looked into philosophy and what the philosophers said about morality, ethics, and these sorts of things? Have you spent time reading about that?
Philosophy per se, no. There was a time when I was looking deeper into the moral and ethical code that's present in yoga, but I also, I didn't spend as much time really going so much in depth. I'm trying to think. Well, yeah, to be fair, no. And I think, quite honestly, I think it's really interesting because I will add that I feel our society lacks this conversation a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny, there's another topic. I hope you come back because I do have to let you go now. But there's a whole topic of virtue and vice, and the virtue being the mean between two extremes,
Mm.
and these sorts of things. So there's a lot there that I think you could draw on frankly, for your work that you do. So I put a link in the description to your website. What is it? You know what is it exactly that you do? How do you describe yourself? Because I didn't even read your bio because I like to discover the person. I like to discover the person on the fly. But how would you describe the services that you
Mm.
offer at magdakay.com?
Yes. So the core of what I do is to help people experience more intimacy. And what I define as intimacy is, like I was saying before, I don't mean intimacy as sexuality. Intimacy for me is the depth of your experience. Like, how deeply do you experience life? So it's the feeling of connection, belonging, love, expansion. And it's a much broader concept, because you can be in a relationship and don't have intimacy, and it's a really bad experience. You can have sex with no intimacy, it's a bad experience. Like, intimacy is really the quality of our relationships, of our life. So that's what I do for people. So I work with couples and I work with singles, depending on the situation you're in. And when I work with couples, usually there are some issues that have arisen. And so I help them kind of heal through this conflict, find the right communication tools, help them reconnect. Also, if the passion is gone and they want to reconnect sexually, I help them with this as well. I give them some practices so they can feel that spark again. And if someone is single and they want to meet someone, or they really struggle, like we said before, I see a lot women really needing to heal the relationship with men, and men needing to heal the relationship with women. I think we've become enemies, and we were created. Here I agree with the church. It's like we were created to really come together, and I don't want to say we complete each other, because I don't think we're incomplete without another human being. But it just, the other person is here to make your life fuller. I don't think we're created to hate each other and be enemies or competitors. No, we came to be together.
Amen. So thank you so much, Magda. Very, very pleasant to meet you, obviously, and I hope you come back because I got a lot more questions. But take good care of yourself, and I'll see you. Well, I won't see you on Twitter because you're not on Twitter, are you?
No, guys, I set up an account on Twitter years ago. Like, I'm talking like 14 years ago, and I never used it. And like a few months ago, I was like, maybe I'll start using Twitter. And I couldn't log in. And
Uh,
it said that you're blocked. I have
what?
no idea why. I
Oh.
never, I never, like, I had maybe 3 posts that I did 14 years ago. So it was something like, I'm going to Asia, right? Like, that's it. I don't know why I'm blocked. And I messaged them, can you like fix it or whatever? Like, help me solve it. No one responded. So I'm just like, it's not meant to happen. So let it go.
But we met on Podmatch,
Yes.
so next time we'll talk a little bit about your experiences on Podmatch. I don't know, have you met a lot of podcast hosts there?
You know what? My first time when I joined, it wasn't a good experience, because I had a
Oh,
couple of calls booked and then people didn't show up. I was like, oh, come on. So then I quit and then I rejoined again. And now it's been good.
okay.
But I did have a few cases of people asking me for money to be a guest on
What?
their show.
What?
Yeah. So I messaged them and they're like, no, no, no. If that ever happens, like report abuse, because you're not meant to be paying anyone to
Wow.
be a guest. But I did.
Wow.
And some were in a very sneaky way, like, hey, if you want also a video, we ask our guests to contribute $300 for my editing
What?
team. And I'm like,
What?
what?
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Mine is only $2.99. I can't believe they're charging 300. So anyway, very nice to meet you. I hope you come back and we'll keep in touch. I think I have your email address, so keep in
Yes.
touch in a few months, 6 months or whatever. Come back, we'll chat some more, okay?
Thank you so much for having me. Have a
God
great
bless you.
day.
You too.
Thank you. You
God bless
too.
you. Bye bye.